Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome to Unmistakably You. I'm Amy. My face is really big on the screen right now. It's kind of freaking me out. Hopefully, you had a great day. I wanted to pop on. I haven't done a live in quite a while, and I will freely admit that I'm probably a little rusty, so bear with me. Hopefully, you are feeling good about where you are in your wedding plans. Hopefully, you are feeling comfortable. You've got some great help if you have a great planner or a coordinator, and you're feeling like you are all set and ready to go, especially if your wedding is coming up in the 2026 season. If you are feeling any kind of panic, though, or if you are just kind of setting up those big pillars of your schedule for the day, that is kind of why I popped on here today, because I know that it is April 1st. My daughter's been playing pranks on me all day. So if you are at the point now where you are starting to really finalize the big details, like what time is your ceremony, what time is your dinner, what are you going to put on your invitations, that's why we're here today, because those can be kind of daunting to try and figure out. So we are here to help talk about some scheduling basics, and then we'll pop on some DIY information too. So just making sure that I can see some comments here. And if you are online and you have questions at any point, don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to answer them. And we'll go through. I know that my background in education demands that I have some kind of visual, but I also know that if you're seeing this on your phone, you probably can't read any of the text on these slides right now. So if that's the case, don't hesitate to shoot me a DM and I will send you the slides later if that's helpful to you. Or you can watch the replay, of course. So first of all, we're just going to, I'll just do a quick introduction of myself and the team. And then we've got kind of like three sort of scheduling areas that we want to focus on. And then we'll talk about some of those DIY do's and don'ts, and then some questions if you have them. So first of all, if I haven't met you yet, hi, I'm Amy. I have owned Unmistakably You since 2009. We've done hundreds of weddings for happy couples, and we are so excited to be launching into another season. I am a mom to a beautiful 8-year-old girl, and I am a wicked stepmother as well to a 23-year-old stepson. I am a general workaholic, and I love weddings. So we're here and ready to go, and loving launching into, I guess this would be our 17th season. Oh my gosh. I say because we have an awesome team. We do offsite weddings, and we also have a cute little studio where we do intimate weddings, elopements, wedding showers, baby showers, those kinds of things. And we're passionate about weddings, and we are looking forward to celebrating with some of you. If you are one of our 2026 or 27 clients, please pop on and say hi. I actually can't see the chat, but Rebecca is monitoring it. So I've got my text open here, and through all of the technology, hopefully we'll catch you if you have a comment or if you want to just pop on and say hi. So when you are thinking about how to lay out those, what I call the big pillars of the day, there are a few factors that are going to play into what you settle on as your ceremony time, what you set aside for photo time, and then your dinner and dance, if you're having one, will also play into things a little bit. So let's start with ceremony time. That is something that you obviously need to know to put on your invitations. And I mean, I've said it 1,000 times, but I'll say it again. Please put your actual ceremony time on your invitations. Don't put half an hour before so that people show up on time. People will show up on time. And if you put half an hour before, then they'll show up half an hour before that. And then it looks like you're an hour late for your own wedding. So don't do that. But when you're initially choosing that time, there are a few things you want to think about. One is, do your guests have to check into a hotel before coming to your ceremony? If you've got out-of-town guests coming in just for the night, oftentimes hotel check-in time isn't until 3 o'clock. If you request early check-in, they can't guarantee it. So if you know that that is the case for a lot of your guests, you'll want to opt for a later ceremony time. You also want to make sure that you allow for travel time between hotel and your venue. Maybe you're providing a shuttle and that's got to start at a specific time that accommodates for your hotel check-in time. One of the major things that often determines your ceremony time is, do you want to join the cocktail hour to mix and mingle with your guests, or do you want to do all of your photos in between? And in that case, you would want to have an earlier ceremony and a longer cocktail hour if you've got to allocate time for photos. If you want to do your photos before, though, you might be able to have a later ceremony and a shorter cocktail hour where you do get to actually go for the majority of the cocktail hour and mix and mingle with your guests. So that might be a determination of the time of day that you choose for your ceremony. The other thing might be venue or church restrictions. So if you are getting married in a church that does 3 weddings on a day, they are likely to have set time slots that you can't deviate from. Or some venues likewise do multiple weddings, and in order to prevent you sort of running into other wedding parties on your way to your ceremony, they will have set ceremony times that you can choose, the early one, the middle one, or the late one. And then you want to think about the length of your ceremony. Is it a church ceremony? If it's a religious ceremony, typically they tend to run a little bit longer. Oftentimes, if we do a Catholic full mass, it runs to a full hour or sometimes even beyond that. When we do a Greek Orthodox ceremony, same thing, it runs to about an hour. Whereas a secular ceremony, if you're getting married on private property or at a hotel that has no religious affiliation, a secular ceremony can be done within 15 to 20 minutes if you keep it really short and sweet. So thinking about the length of your ceremony is going to play into the start time as well. And then finally, with regard to ceremony, you'll want to think about the style of food. If you're providing a full dinner, then you want to allow enough time for your ceremony to finish, your cocktail hours and your photos to be done, and then a reasonable dinner start time. You can't be starting a full meal at 10 p.m. But if you are having a dessert reception or just a cocktail reception, it's fully acceptable to start your ceremony later than, an afternoon sort of traditional North American wedding ceremony, and start it after dinner. And then guests aren't expecting to have a full dinner. You also have to put that on your invitations. Please let them know if it's not a full meal so that they can come prepared. But that would allow you to start your ceremony much later in the day. Now, photos are kind of intertwined with that. I already mentioned your cocktail hour. If you would need to do all of your photos, meaning your photos with yourself and your partner, your wedding party photos, and your family photos, if you need to do all of those in between your ceremony and your dinner starting, you're going to need to allocate a fair amount of time for that. So usually, and I would always defer to your photographer on this, but usually I see photographers requesting about 30 to 45 minutes for just the two of you, just you and your partner. Then they'll ask for 30 to 45 minutes with the wedding party, usually. Again, ask them what they think. And then you'll also need probably 20 to 30 minutes with your family. It's often easiest to do those family photos after the ceremony, especially if you're incorporating some extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, that kind of thing, because they've been at the ceremony. They are a captive audience, and you can have your officiant ask them to gather by the willow tree for some family photos. So that way you can make sure that they're all there and avoid losing Uncle Bob to the bar. Uncle Bob, he's the worst. You will also need to allocate some travel time in between photo locations. So if it's a large property and you have to walk from the pond to the bush to the barn, whatever it is, then allow for some walking time. If you're going to several different locations, you have to allow for travel time, perhaps on a Saturday when traffic is busy. If it's construction season, think about that as well. You'll need to think about the time for what I like to call kitten herding. We often are likened to cat herders in our job because we're constantly just trying to gather people together. So regardless of how smooth and streamlined you try to make it and how well you communicate with your wedding party or with your family, there's always going to be somebody that is in the bathroom or somebody, Uncle Bob, who's at the bar. So we want to make sure that we allow some time in between those photos to get everybody there that you need. I mentioned family photos often happen after the ceremony. If you're just doing immediate family, you could certainly do those photos beforehand. If it's just yourself, your parents, and your brother or something like that, that's a fairly small group that you could easily ask to come to your getting ready location and do some photos. It's also really nice if, let's say, you wanted to do a first look with your dad, for instance, then to have him at your getting ready location so that he can do a big reveal once you're dressed and once you have your hair and makeup done. That's a great opportunity to do that. It's also a great opportunity to do all of your photography. So if you opt to go for no first look, if you opt to go for a first look, I just explained no first look. If you opt to go for a first look, it is a great opportunity to have that really honest moment with your partner where there's nobody else around, and it gets the photos done while you're fresh after you've just gotten ready. It gives you a relief in terms of your nerves. Your cortisol calms right down because you have just finally seen the love of your life, and now you're together for the rest of the day instead of prolonging that anticipation. And it's a good opportunity to do your wedding party photos as well, because again, everybody's fresh, everybody's there. Nobody has hopefully had too much to drink yet. So if you do all of those photos beforehand, it frees you up to perhaps attend the cocktail hour a little bit later, or to have a little bit of a later ceremony. Now, the final thing to consider is if you are doing a kind of traditional structure to your day where it's ceremony, cocktails, dinner, dance, you want to work backwards from your dance. In Ontario, the sun tends to set somewhere around 9 o'clock, 8:30 to 9 o'clock in the middle of peak wedding season. So check your sunset times and work backwards from there. And the reason I say that is because people don't like to dance when it's still super bright out. So if you're trying to start a dance at 7 o'clock, your DJ or your band is going to have a really hard time getting that dance going. So work backwards from, let's say, maybe 9 p.m. would be the optimal time to be doing your first dances and then to open your dance floor to your guests. When you're planning your meal, if it's a buffet, it's always faster than plated. And so allow for that. Ask your caterer how long meal service is going to take, but also be aware, and if there are any caterers listening, we love you. Caterers typically they underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take to serve. They overestimate how fast they are. So just allow a little bit of a buffer time in there. And maybe if they say it's going to take half an hour per course, allow 35 to 40 minutes per course. You'll also, if you're doing some speeches, want to allow 5 minutes per speech. That needs to be communicated to your speakers. Your typical 5 would be your maid of honor, best man, parents, and you. But of course, we know that every dynamic is different. So often there are more or fewer speeches. If you tell them to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes, some of them will go over. And then if you have an MC introducing in between, about 5 minutes per speech is what we usually recommend. You could do them between courses if you're having a plated meal. I typically find that that does not save any time. It does break things up a little bit, but you have to herd those cats again. So if we're trying to gather everybody for 2 speeches before the entree, there's somebody out smoking and there's somebody in the bathroom and there are people in the parking lot. So we just have to continually herd those cats, which does take up a little bit of time. So you may want to consider doing your speeches in a more traditional sort of all together, what I like to call a clump. Lots of things to think about there. But those are what I like to say are sort of the big pillars of your day that you need to have set before you send out your invitations: your ceremony time and your dinner start time. Not that your dinner start time goes on your invitation. I would actually caution you against putting too much information about time on your invitation, unless there's travel time between ceremony and your cocktail hour. It doesn't start for a couple hours after your ceremony. That's where you would maybe want to put that on an invite. Ceremonies at 1 o'clock, cocktails start at 4 at the hall. Those are the kinds of things to put on an invitation, but don't get too specific about timing. Now, if you were thinking about having a first look, you might want to consider, I've done both of these timelines with a 7 p.m. dinner. You might want to consider doing, let's say, a 5 p.m. ceremony And then if you back that up to just over 2 hours before, that might be when you'd like to do your first look, because that gives you time to do your first look, to do your couples photos for half an hour or 45 minutes, to do your wedding party photos for half an hour or 45 minutes. And then you're still finished with lots of time to spare to freshen up and hide out before your guests arrive for a 5 o'clock ceremony. You might want to double check your lighting as well for the ceremony. That might make an impact. If you're getting married outside, you want to think about, are your guests going to be in full sun, or is it going to be shaded? Because you do want your guests to be comfortable. That would allow you then to start dinner at 7. Dinner is going to take, let's say, depending on guest count and style of service, it's going to take maybe an hour and a half. That gets you to speeches at 8:30 and first dances by 9, which is perfect with the light in midsummer in Southern Ontario. Of course, adjust those numbers as you see fit for your location and for the time that the sun sets. Now, if you want to have no first look and see each other at the end of the aisle for the first time, this is actually my husband in the picture, if you can see it. He hates this picture because he's crying, because he's seen me in my dress for the first time at the end of the aisle, and he's trying to hold it all back. That's one of the things that if you don't have a first look, just prepare for all the feels at the end of the aisle. And that can make for a really special moment and a special picture as well. In this case, you'll see that we've got the ceremony earlier, so it's at 4 o'clock, and that allows a bigger gap in between your dinner start time. So you still have the same amount of time for your family photos, for your wedding party photos, for your couples photos. And then I always allow a buffer between photos ending and dinner starting. So if you assume that you do your couples photos at 5:45, that takes you to 6:30, which is a perfect time to get your guests seated. Then you can freshen up a little bit, go to the washroom, do your grand entrance, do your housekeeping announcements, maybe somebody's saying grace. It gives you lots of time before dinner service starts so that you're not making your caterer wait and the appetizers are getting cold or whatever it is. Now, there are some blanks to fill in, obviously, between those big pillars of the ceremony and the dinner and the dance start time. And most of them involve how to keep your guests active and knowledgeable about what comes next so that they don't have any questions and there's no confusion. So one of the things is when your guests arrive, if it's not super obvious, how do they know where to go for the ceremony? How do they know where to put their card or their gift? It might be worth having someone greeting guests as they come from the parking lot or off of the shuttle. It might be worth having some signage so that your guests don't have any questions about where they need to go next. You might also, when we do an outdoor wedding, people often like to congregate under a tree, let's say. And so one of the things that we do when we coordinate is we always end up just circulating about 10 minutes before the ceremony and asking guests to take their seats so that we can get started on time. You need to think about if you want to have drinks available for your guests pre-ceremony. It doesn't have to be alcoholic beverages, although it could. It could be as simple as a water station or an iced tea station, just especially if it's a hot day to keep guest comfort in mind. If you do have beverages available that have disposable cans or bottles or cups, please provide appropriate recycling containers so that the garbage can get put in the garbage and not left all over the ceremony site. I already mentioned the time on the invitation versus the ceremony start time. Please, unless there is an extenuating circumstance, please put the ceremony start time on accurately on your invitations. There is one venue here in town where they do a ceremony at the top of a ski hill. And so they take guests up in the actual gondola, which is super cool, but it does take some time. So in that kind of an extenuating circumstance, that's where you might want to put ceremony start time is 3 o'clock, guest arrival time is 2:30, to access the ceremony site via gondola or something like that. Just be clear rather than trying to trick people. Cocktail hour is another place where there's usually a transition, so guests will need some instruction. How do they know where to go? I would suggest asking your officiant to make an instructional announcement at the end of the ceremony so that guests know exactly where to go. They maybe need to be told where the washrooms are, where the bar is. They might need to be told, when dinner starts at that point, but that's something that your officiant can announce right after the ceremony when your guests are still paying attention. You need to think about if there are drinks and food available. That's something that hopefully you have already accommodated for with your bartender and your caterer. But if you haven't had that conversation with them yet, have it with them now, because if you're providing alcohol during the cocktail hour, you absolutely want to be providing food. And a number of people that we chat with just haven't quite put that piece together. But please provide food if there is alcohol. The cocktail hour is often the hardest hit at the bar. Think about whether there's entertainment for the guests. So when you're laying out the schedule for the day, do you have something to keep the guests engaged? Do you have music? Do you have lawn games? Do you have some kind of interactive photo display? Do you have things that they will be able to occupy themselves with, especially if you're doing all of your photos during that time, because it's going to be an extended cocktail hour. So if all they have to do is drink, you're going to end up with a lot of drunk guests. So just be mindful of that. And then finally, the putting together the blanks on the reception, you'll want to make sure you know how to get your guests seated. So this is something to think about. Again, maybe you have your DJ make an announcement, or perhaps you have your coordinator circulate and ask guests to be seated. You'll want to have an MC, a competent one, a non-drunk one, to ensure the flow. And this is something that I have lots of resources about. Reach out if you have questions. But you want to make sure that you have that in order and organized well before the wedding, so that your MC can be prepared to help keep things flowing. You'll want to also think about avoiding long breaks. So as you're sort of structuring out the day, people tend to think it's nice to have a break after dinner so people can go to the washroom or go have a smoke. But that break, again, with the herding cats, often gets extended, and it can get awkward. It can really delay your dance time starting, and it can make it so that if you're dance people and you want to have a dance, it can really shorten that dance. So try to avoid long breaks if you can. And as I already mentioned, you're going to want to think about how many speeches and how long are they going to be? Where are you going to put them in the order of things? And then think about your first dances. Are you doing the traditional first dance, father, daughter, mother, son? Are you going to put your parents together into one parent dance? You may need to do multiple parent dances if there are step parents or other special people or grandparents perhaps involved. So you'll want to have those things not necessarily scheduled to the minute, but you'll want to have an idea fairly early in your process of planning as to how that's going to go. Now, the third thing are tweaks. Every wedding is different. And that's why I love my job, because no two Saturdays are the same. So lean into what makes you, you. Lean into what you and your partner love. Don't be afraid to adjust the norms. There are absolutely traditions, but don't be afraid to go outside of those traditions if a different structure of the day is more representative of you as a couple. So instead of your very typical receiving line at the end of the ceremony, maybe you could do a photo scramble. So you want to get all of your guests into a photo, and you go table to table, and the couple moves and the tables stay stationary, and each of the guests at one table groups together and takes a photo with you. Or the couple stays stationary on the dance floor and each table runs up and takes a quick photo. Instead of your first dance after dinner, you may find it more convenient or more desirable to have that first dance right away as soon as you enter the reception. One, that might allow you to shorten photography and videography time if you're hoping to book a shorter package with those professionals. And two, it might help you get some nerves out. If you are nervous about your first dance, getting it over with earlier might be a relief to you. Also, side note, if you're nervous about your first dance, we are running a Get Comfortable Dancing First Dance Workshop next Thursday, April the 9th, and we have 2 spaces left. So if you're interested, head on over to our website and we can get you booked in for that. Instead of speeches between courses, like I said, that can actually, it certainly doesn't shorten things, and it can actually delay things. It can actually upset your caterers too if you've got long speeches happening before the entree and now your beef is overcooked. Instead of that, think about maybe doing your speeches in a block. It's more efficient. If you tell people to keep them short, it goes quickly. Instead of a full sit-down dinner, think about doing, like I mentioned earlier, some kind of a variation on that, maybe a cocktail or a dessert reception, or maybe a brunch wedding. If you're not dance people, if you're not traditional sort of structure people, think outside the box. Host your wedding at a different time of day or at a different location than a traditional wedding reception. Okay. Moving on past scheduling, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to pop them into the chat right now. Rebecca is there and we're happy to answer anything that might come up. And if, like I said before, if you tuned in later and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't read these tiny little words on my computer screen, but I really want to know what I missed, just shoot us a DM and I will send you these slides. One final thing that is kind of going to play into your scheduling is anything that you might be DIYing. And it's not so much the schedule on the day. I really hope you are not building an arch on the day of your wedding or assembling your centerpieces on the day of your wedding. But this is going to play into the schedule in the week leading up to your wedding. So if you are, baking cookie favors, or if you're making your own cake, or if you're sewing your own dresses, or if you're assembling your own florals, think about realistically how much time that's going to take. And the fact that some of that you can get done well in advance. But if you don't, what's that last week going to look like when you are potentially greeting guests coming from out of town and you're trying to get your nails done, but you can't get your nails done if you still have to do your flowers, those kinds of things. So if you're doing some DIY, here are my do's. Absolutely do what you are comfortable with and what you know how to do. If you have never used royal icing on a sugar cookie, the time to do it is not the week before your wedding. If you have never baked a 3-tier cake and covered it entirely in fondant with sugar flowers, the time to learn how to do that is not the week before your wedding. So do as much in advance as you can. Think about those things that you're going to have to do the week before and make sure that you allocate time for that. I would also encourage you to enlist the help of people who are not in your wedding party and who are not family to help on the day of. The most key person would be your planner, or your coordinator. Now, ideally, if you have a planner, all of this stuff is off of your plate. If you can't afford a planner, but you've hired a manager, a month of manager or a coordinator, again, all of this stuff should be dealt with well in advance of the wedding. Please make sure it's not you on the wedding day having to set up or assemble anything. Enlist the help of other people. I'm 98% sure you've got a cousin who has some friends that could come in and set up some decor for you. Grunt labor is pretty easy to come by. It should not be you on your wedding day. Don't leave things till the last minute. Don't tackle something you have no experience with. Don't expect to replicate Pinterest or Instagram. There's so much beautiful inspiration out there, but oftentimes it's styled shoots, so it's not real weddings. It's people who are going really big on the decor for one table that they're going to photograph. It's not replicable or affordable to do for 20 guest tables. And don't get so wrapped up in your DIY that you can't enjoy the process or the day. Looks like we have a question from Ashley. Recommendation of where to put the cake cutting. Yes, I should have mentioned that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. There are a few different places you can do it. One, if your photographer or videographer is leaving early, as I mentioned, if you're maybe doing your first dance early and then sending your photographer home, you could do it right before the reception starts. So maybe you do your first dance, you do your cake cutting, and then you go take your seat at the head table. If your cake is being served for dessert, it absolutely needs to be cut well in advance of dessert so that your caterers can take it to the back. They can cut and plate it for you. So again, if that cake is being served for dessert, that's another time when you might want to do the cake cutting right after your grand entrance. If your cake isn't being served, it might be a good way to fill a little bit of time between your entree course and your dessert course. So while plates are being cleared from your entree, you might want to announce the cake cutting and people can come over and watch and take photos. And that covers a little bit of that clearing time that's awkward for guests otherwise. And that also is a nice little signal that dessert is about to start. You could also cut it a little bit later. If you were to do your dessert and then your speeches, then you could cut your cake after your speech and before your first dance so that that first dance flows into opening up the dance floor. So you've still got people's attention because you've done the speeches, you cut the cake, and then you get the dance, the party part of the evening started. I have had couples as well who have cut the cake and served it themselves at late night time. So if you still have a photographer around, if you're interested in having that little interaction with your guests, that can be a meaningful time to connect with guests because they just want a piece of you on the wedding day. And if you haven't had a chance to mingle at cocktail hour, it might be a nice time to just have just a moment with each of your guests. That does take you off the dance floor and it consumes some of your party time. So think about that. What I wouldn't do is break up your reception with a lot of little things because your DJ or your band are going to work really hard to get momentum going, to get people on the dance floor. And if you keep interrupting that with, okay, now we're going to do the shoe game. Okay, now we're going to cut the cake. Okay, now we're going to toss the bouquet. Okay, now we've got the late night. It makes it really hard to get a dance party really cooking. So be nice to your DJ or your band leader and just don't chop things up into little chunks. We try to group things together. So if you're doing a shoe game, maybe you do the shoe game and then you cut the cake and then you serve the late night food and it's all in a clump and then we can start another dance set. So Ashley, hopefully that helps. Rebecca, I'm sure you would let me know if there's anything else in the comments. But, if you happen to be catching this on a replay and you have a question, we're always available. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. I'm available by email, amy@unmistakably.you.com. You can DM us here. You can give me a phone call. My number's there. Our website, unmistakably.you.com. Lots and lots of ways to get in touch with us. And we're always happy to chat about weddings because that's what we love. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope that your plans are coming along really well and that you are feeling great about creating a schedule that flows seamlessly for your guests and that is a day that you and your special loved ones will really enjoy celebrating. Until next time, have a great couple of months, year, 2 years until your wedding, and reach out if you need help. Take care.